Very, very interesting new finding underwater in the Gulf of Naples. Scientists have discovered a coral reef beneath the Gulf of Naples at a depth of half a kilometer, 500 meters. That's 1,500 feet. So what is it hiding? Is there a connection with the volcano? Does the volcano make this grow? And what is the conclusion regarding the danger of this massive supervolcano that is on land and in water? And we have heard from the INGV that they have enhanced their underwater monitoring of the caldera. So let's look into this. Hi everyone, please take a cup of coffee and listen to what I'm about to tell you, because this is really, really mysterious but also fascinating, and that in light of more earthquakes happening right now in Campi Flegrei. For me, this is at least a 2-week earthquake swarm that is happening, and they don't stop. Very, very concerning, because I fear that we might see a bigger one again. The homes are already rattled, some homes are cracked, some homes are heavily damaged. So this could lead to a collapse of more homes, and of course that would put the residents in grave danger. But what is going on underwater? We're looking so much at the Solfatara, at the Fumaroles. The roads are being melted. They pave over it. The volcano melts them again, but it does something underwater as well. And I have recently released a video for you guys where the people of Pompeii thought, oh my God, everything's flourishing. Things are growing, the grapes, the wine, it's amazing. But that was a warning sign of the volcano. I'll put that in the end screen. So is this growing of these corals, this hidden coral reef, mysterious coral reef, very, very rare? Is this a sign? So this is a astonishing discovery beneath the Mediterranean in the Gulf of Naples, near the restless heart of the Campi Flegrei volcano. Could they be linked? So this came out today in October. This October, so just right now, scientists have revealed a breathtaking find. A vast coral reef lying 500 meters, over 1,500 feet below sea level in the Gulf of Naples. And if you look at the map here, the Gulf of Naples, Campi Flegrei, that's the red line, it stretches into the Gulf of Naples. We have underwater fumaroles, we have stuff going on there as well. We could see an eruption underwater, which would be devastating for everyone on land. It would send a massive tsunami towards Naples. But let's get back to the coral reef, because that is really something very, very rare. It was discovered in the Dorn Canyon. You see this here on the map. There's various canyons and they're very, very deep. It's basically a deep underwater valley just off the coast of Naples. They used an underwater submarine robot. They call this ROV, like remotely operated vehicle. So a robotic submarine fitted with mechanical arms and mechanical cameras so that it could really have a good look, and it could climb around. It could climb a vertical wall more than 300 feet high, and it could send images of these coral structures to the top. And these coral structures, some are over like 2 meters, like 6 feet wide. They're massive. So what kind of corals are they? So they are mostly white corals. White corals are deep water corals that are very hard, and they lack any bright color because little light reaches that deep. There's 2 species mentioned that they found there, the Lophelia pertusa and the Madrepora oculata. But the reef is not just white corals. It also hosts black corals, solitary corals, sponges, rare species like the deep oyster, Neophycnodonte cibrovi, and the Acesta excavata. That is just biological wording. That's not the main topic that we have here. But another thing that this does, it preserves fossils. And fossils tell stories, we know that. Traces of ancient corals and oysters. So it's not only a living ecosystem, but it's also a geological record. And that is very important in an area like Campi Flegrei, because scientists still don't know much about the danger and what it can do. So having this geological testament hopefully helps. So this discovery was made during an expedition that was called the Demetra Scientific Expedition aboard the research vessel Gaia Blue. And one mission of that expedition, the goal was not to research Campi Flegrei. They wanted to protect and restore fragile habitats, and that's why they were looking so far deep. And what they're planning to do now is they plan to use sensors, and they plan to track parameters like the temperature down there, the salinity, and dissolved CO2 like carbon dioxide. Also in the surrounding waters. Yeah, on this biologically seen, this is very important because reefs like this are extremely rare in the Mediterranean, especially so far deep down. And we want to know how they respond to change, because they're hotspots of biodiversity and they are key to understanding deep sea ecosystems, and then build a potential connection to what's going on at the volcano. Because Campi Flegrei, the burning fields, this massive volcanic system has underwater secrets, and the scientists are just slowly finding out about them. Campi Flegrei is not only a land volcano, the highest densely populated volcano in the world. Its caldera extends underneath the sea into the Gulf of Pozzuoli. And Pozzuoli is the area, that's the red zone. We're talking about more than 500,000 people that live on this volcano, which is crazy. And in 2024, they installed a new multi-parametric observatory underwater in a submerged sector of the volcano. It's called the Secca delle Fumose. And since then, this observatory continuously monitors Campi Flegrei, the temperature of hydrothermal emissions from the seafloor, the concentration of volcanic CO2 in the seawater, and the marine current, the water flow. In addition to that, we have tide gogs that tell us about the land rise. And gosh, guys, look at that. These are the various stations, and the Medusa station. This shows us how much this is rising since 2005. We're approaching 1.50 meters, 4 to 5 feet. Why are they measuring underwater, you might ask, or maybe you might not if you've been watching my channel for a while. Well, these measurements help estimate the energy that is there underwater, of underwater degassing, for example. And let's make that clear. Gas escaping from volcanic systems into the seawater. And I want to get back to the Medusa system because this is interesting. Look at what Campi Flegrei is doing in terms of land rise, and look at what Vesuvius is doing, because there might be a connection. I have made a video about that. I put it in the end screen as well. But guys, you really should subscribe if you haven't yet. And I have a playlist, Campi Flegrei, where you find all these videos, because in the end screen you can only click one, right? So check that out. Check out that playlist if you're interested, because there's more going on between Vesuvius and Campi Flegrei than originally estimated. So this new installation complements the existing Medusa network. But that's not all. A 2025 INGV study mapped the submerged structure of Campi Flegrei. They have used magnetic surveys, seismic data, bathymetry, that is mapping of underwater topography, and they have identified a previously unknown an ancient submerged caldera, and evidence of a large submarine landslide off the coast near Ischia. I've reported about that, again, playlist. And in short, the underwater flank of Campi Flegrei holds hidden volcanic architecture that we're just beginning to see. And that can give us clues, valuable clues about past activity. And underwater landslides is always something scary because that can send massive tsunamis towards the coast. Naples, with greater Naples area, more than 6 million people, densely populated, very narrowly squeezed with old buildings, narrow winding roads. No good escape routes at all. So with all the studies that we have, of course, they're building a geochemical model of the system of Campi Flegrei, and a model that can detect changes over time and possibly warning of shifts in the volcanic activity, but it's still very rudimentary. But we know the unrest at Campi Flegrei is accelerating. The volcano is active. We've had tens of thousands of earthquakes from 2005 till now, but they have accelerated in the last 2 years. This year's breaking another record, over like 5,200 earthquakes. So I've also reported that in addition to that, researchers have used AI to detect many more small earthquakes than previously recognized. We were talking about 50,000 earthquakes. Everything was red. Basically, this has illuminated hidden fault lines that they didn't know about, has revealed structures like this ring fault in the surrounding uplift zones. If you want to learn more, playlist. So the picture that we're having of Campi Flegrei altogether, the picture that is emerging is that Campi Flegrei is a complex dynamic system with both parts on land and submerged. Network of faults, hydrothermal conduits, degassing zones, and we're just starting to map its underwater terrain. So the big question that looms in the room is that new finding of the corals. Could that be linked? Could that tell us something about Campi Flegrei? So could the reef and the volcano be connected? Is the reef somehow influenced by volcanic or hydrothermal activity beneath? We have to explore the plausibilities very carefully because we have no proof of that yet. This was just discovered. They share geography, and they're very close to each other. That we definitely know. The reef lies in the Gulf of Naples, just off the coast, near the same region that hosts Campi Flegrei and its submerged extensions. The Caldera of Campi Flegrei extends underwater into the Gulf of Pozzuoli and is part of the marine setting around Naples. So spatially, they share a marine neighborhood, that's how it's called. Is there a potential hydrothermal influence? That's the first thought that comes to mind. Because deep reefs, they sometimes thrive near hydrothermal vents or areas where chemical energy is available underwater. I have reported about that in my video about that monstrosity of an underwater volcano off the coast of Oregon that is now surveilled with cameras because it's about to go off. And they have discovered interesting marine life there that is connected to the volcano. So is this the same case here as well? Could these hydrothermal fluids, or could there be hydrothermal fluids from Campi Flegrei, like heated water, volcanic gases, influence that reef by supplying nutrients or altering the chemical conditions in this area? Because the new underwater volcanic observatory measures hydrothermal degassing, CO2 emissions, temperature changes, parameters that, in principle, influence marine chemistry near the seabed. Because if volcanic CO2 dissolves in seawater at the seafloor, it changes the acidity, the pH value in this area, and the carbon chemistry. And that can potentially affect the growth of marine life positively, but also negatively. But deep corals like the Lophelia, they often live in cold, low light, stable chemical conditions, and they may prefer relatively stable in environments, so large fluctuations could stress them. So this is an indicator that they have been left alone, that Campi Flegrei has not influenced them. Well, let's look at the geological stability and the formation of this reef. So what does it take for a coral reef to build and persist over long periods of time? It needs a relatively stable substrate like rock or hard floor, and minimal violent disturbances like strong hydrothermal bursts, landslides, or eruptions. So a volcano's flank or underwater collapse zone could disrupt reef growth. So again, the first thought that comes to mind, so Campi Flegrei is not reaching in these canyons. But the reef also contains these fossil traces. So that tells us it has endured through time, perhaps over thousands of years. So that suggests geological stability at that spot despite the nearby volcanic activity. But new magnetic and bathymetric studies, they found these previously unknown volcanic structures under the sea near Campi Flegrei. So some of them include ancient calderas and anomalies. So if those structures underlie parts of the seabed near that coral reef, they might affect the substrate texture, the fractures, or the fluid flow path in this area. And they could even create routes for low-level, high thermal fluid seepage. Carbon dating suggests that parts of the coral reef may be tens of thousands of years old. Some reports say roughly 60,000 years. So this predates recent volcanic episodes. So the reef likely began forming a long time ago, before much of the current hydrothermal activity has happened, definitely before Monte Nuovo was formed, before that eruption. But still, the reef may have originated under much calmer conditions and only later had to adapt to surroundings as volcanic activity has evolved. We don't know that. So in my view, a connection is plausible but indirect. I don't expect that the volcano is controlling the reef growth like a gardener, right? It's more likely that the reef sits in a zone where volcanic influence is weak or it's buffered, and where the conditions remain stable enough to support the coral architecture. That gives us valuable insight about the reach, the underwater reach of Campi Flegrei. So if I had to bet, I would say there might be a faint hydrothermal seep influence on that coral reef that is coming from Campi Flegrei, like trace chemical anomalies, slight heat, or CO2 flux. But nothing dramatic, because then the reef would be too fragile for like big swings. It wouldn't exist anymore. So I think to prove a link between these two systems, the scientists need to, and again, this was just discovered, they need to map fluid seeps and temperature anomalies in the reef area, and I'm very sure they will do this. They have to analyze isotopic or chemical signatures in the coral skeletons, and they have to look for volcanic gas tracers as well. And they have to compare small scale spatial data. Is the reef closer to minor faults or conduits that are leading from underlying volcanic structures? So a lot of work still needs to be done, but it's very interesting. The more we learn, the more fascinating that is, but it is very, very dangerous. Let's have a quick look at the current earthquake activity. We just had a magnitude 1.6, 1.0, 2.1, then at Vesuvius 1.4, but then when we go back on the 14th, on the 13th, on the 12th, on the 11th, so it keeps going. Let's have a look at the 1.6 with the epicenter, and it's no surprise. It's basically close to the Solfatara, close to Pozzuoli. And guys, I just hope that we won't see a bigger one. There's nothing going on. There's no evacuations going on. Residents say they want to be relocated. The government would have to provide housing solutions, but nobody is really moving. So basically, you would have to build a new town in a safer area to at least relocate these 500,000 people. But this doesn't seem to happen. I know this is difficult, but you know, what's your choice? Do you really want to live on top of this massive, unique in the world volcano? It's crazy. I'll keep you updated, guys. Check out the videos in the end screen. Lots of interesting stuff. I see you there. If you want to fill me up with coffee, check the link in the description. buymeacoffee.com/silky. Thank you for your supers, guys. Thank you for your nice comments. Thank you for being here. Hype the video if you can. And I see you in the next one. Stay safe, right? Bye-bye.